Does the right hand know what the left hand's doing? I've got my Verizon wireless little MiFi in my left hand. And then I've got my Kindle Fire showing the carousel in my right hand, showing the book cover I worked. And that was the previous page where I was reading some of the reviews on Molasses Moon. And then we've got the actual book cover here from Molasses Moon that I've been reading from and currently finished and taking off from that. Actually bringing the themes and some of the writing processes into the present, into a live, I don't know whether it's called a vlog, a video log, or what it would be called. But for me, it's a continuation of Molasses Moon. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the little wireless device so that my Kindle Fire will be automatically online in case I want to go somewhere there. Some of the things I wanted to work with today, I want to continue from video 55. This is number 56, and today is Monday, March 12th. So I don't have a backlog anymore of videos previously recorded. So I really still don't know day to day whether I'll continue this or how, but if I continue from the Molasses Moon series numbers, then I'll be tying it in somehow to those themes and those styles. Things, I guess I should mention always the point of power in the present, be where I am and see the significance. Here we have a thumb that I've been exercising quite a bit. It's been a little bit sore, and when I exercise them now with using the magnesium on the transdermal method on my thumbs, they crack and pop, which from my speculation is ridding of calcium and other types of deposits that are preventing the free flow in your nerves and the joints. And actually these deposits can form anywhere in any part of your body. So periodically I'll still be talking a little bit about magnesium and soy products, since they're such a major part of the marketplace. Farming that relates to that now, a type of farming, instead of spelled F-A-R-M, it's spelled P-H-A-R-M, and the P-H is supposed to stand for pharmaceutical. This is a branch, from what I've read on the soybean industry, of growing soybeans in various genetically modified forms to cure most diseases as pharmaceuticals, with also the potential, if there was a dark side of it that chose to use that, would be to both cause and cure the same disease. But the way these soybeans are grown with genetic modifications for pharmaceuticals is to use the whole plant with each different type of genetic modification to cause a certain effect through DNA modification in a pharmaceutical or drug type of process. And from what I've read, what they would do is grind the soybeans into a powder and then put them in containers to be sold as pharmaceuticals. Honestly, my first response to this was positive in one sense, because if you're making a powder out of the whole plant, even if it's genetically modified, a whole plant organism is a different entity than in the past, when the drug companies would attempt to isolate what they'd call an active ingredient in an herb, which was used medicinally, and then recreate through chemicals, synthesized chemicals, what they thought the active ingredient was. And the theories of many holistic practitioners, and me included, is that the whole organism is needed to prevent side effects and to have a balanced type of medicinal. And in essence, too, since some holistic practitioners, and myself included, believe that food is the best medicine, and the body does see a whole herb as a food rather than a medicine. The body, I think, originally wasn't really designed for medicines to be separated from foods or herbs, plants. Anyway, this is all speculation. And so who's right or who's wrong in the different ends of the medical profession, from the orthodox allopathic, it's called, medicine, to the homeopathic or holistic osteopathic. They're just two ends of a continuum. One is attempting to be more natural and whole rather than breaking things down too far into a synthesized item that the body might not recognize. I'm here touching my Kindle and trying to want to keep it lit up. So there are a lot of questions in food and drug industries and what's healthy and what isn't. That seems to be, and the politics and religion involved, because all this is connected. You don't really separate politics and religion and food, and it is all one. And yet you separate it to study and understand each piece. So here I'm just kind of rambling along with some of the different things I might want to cover today. The other thing I wanted to deal with, in addition to some of these other issues like the soybean pro and cons and farming and all the good versus bad people in all these industries, and of course what I consider bad or evil would be people that want to manipulate and control to the point of enslaving in one way or another, whether it's through brainwashing or actual physical DNA modifications through foods and chemicals, or farming with the pH. To me, the bad people would be trying to control populations through use of these things. The good people in these industries are the ones that actually want to use this science, or these efforts, whatever you want to call them, to truly help people. The other thing I saw about farming soybeans and using them whole, even if it's in a genetically modified form, being a whole organism, is still in some ways more, I think, understood, if you want to use that word, by the body as mind and soul as a whole, than something that is separated into a chemical, recreated, not organically. There's just something I think that the body has a hard time dealing with, and probably most times considers it a toxin. Which is probably why, if you have a poorly functioning liver, most synthesized chemical, just pure chemistry medicines are warned to not be used if you have a poor liver, because they're considered a toxin, and they might do some of their benefit temporarily while the body's trying real hard to get rid of them, because they think they're a poison. They're not recognizing them as a food or a medicinal. These are all my theories that reflect quite a bit a lot of the holistic medicine type theories too. So I went further actually into the soybean thing that I wanted at the moment, but maybe I'll quickly jump to the other subject I might want to look at sort of as a balance, and then go back to the potentials in the powdered use of soy that I can see as definitely beneficial and potentially harmful, depending on who's driving the use of them and manipulating it. The people that truly want to help and do what's best for the people that are buying their products, or the ones who want to manipulate and control through the sales of their products. The other thing I want to look at is based on the Kindle that I had just shown. The story I worked is still what I'm basing from right now. It's already published, but I have within this story my visceral history concept. I'm working in that book, redesigning and editing my visceral history code, because I've had in mind from the beginning to present just the essence of it to start with, and then working from that, periodically adding more. And I've been spending a lot of time trying to perfect the next phase of that visceral history code. That's one of my current ongoing writing projects, which I wanted to interject into this stew here that we have going relating to Molasses Moon. Actually, it's very possible instead of just gingerbread, some stews could benefit from a little bit of molasses if you balance it with the salty, meaty flavors that you usually expect in stew. It's easy to have molasses go, just a way of providing richness in flavor in addition, or balancing it to not be too sweet. So I'm counterbalancing my current writing project of editing and evolving more. It's more evolving. What I'm doing is worked into realizing that my visceral history code needed to be as personal, cozy, whatever you want to call it, and warm, based from my own personal drives and motivations. As the code itself, it's all visceral. So if the stories are visceral, coming from the gut, then I'm finding now that the code needs to have a little bit of my guts in there too. And that's what I'm working on. So shifting back to the soybean powder. It's the use of this powdered form that I'm speculating, and my holistic doctor friend is tending to agree, that a lot of the beverages now being served in restaurants are being provided to the restaurants in a powdered form, that they just can add water. Two of these that I've actually enjoyed most recently in restaurants has been lemonade. Somehow the powdered effects, including a lot of soy, what I've noticed is a lot of things that are served or presented in powdered form are using a lot of soybeans in that powder. And of course the good people are thinking they're doing good with it, maybe providing the supposed benefits that I really don't agree with, of soybeans reducing cholesterol, since in the first place I think cholesterol and salt are two of the most vitally needed foods of the body. So making two of the most vitally needed foods be considered bad or unhealthy has been possibly an unhealthy promotion of a concept. There are a lot of medical professionals on more the holistic side that believe now, when you read, I've mentioned certain of the doctors promoting more the types of fats that have been, to use a word, demonized, and I don't really like that term any more than politically correct or politically incorrect, but they do still serve a purpose. Haven't found a good substitute. Butter, animal fat, lard, salt, all these things have been termed evil for the heart. And I think in essence, they're probably what your heart and your whole body needs most. This is my personal opinion, and it also reflects quite a few people in the osteopathic types of medical professions. Getting back to that natural state. So, using the powder. I'm also a person that believes in following your taste buds. I've said this many times. I still believe that your body tells you what it needs for its chemical balance of the moment by what sounds good, smells good, or tastes good. at the time of being ready and wanting to eat. I was definitely drawn by taste, and I had to ask myself whether this was an addiction or a true craving, and I've discussed this other times too in other ways, so I'm not going to go into detail and sidetrack too far there. But I did, for myself, identify it as an honest, healthy craving rather than an addiction, which can tend to make you want to eat things that aren't good for you or ingest things that aren't. Just to quickly identify the difference. A true healthy craving does satisfy, and your body feels like it's getting a cold drink of water in a desert. Your whole body says yes and thank you. And an addiction, you never really totally feel a sense of satisfaction, and you're constantly needing more. With a true craving, a certain amount, you might eat a whole cake, you might eat a few bites of something you're craving. But you come to a point, if you're listening to your body, of being satisfied, and you don't need or want more. And sometimes it's a one-day thing. Sometimes a healthy craving can last for months. But all of a sudden you realize you don't want any more. That's it. You've had enough. You've gotten whatever you needed. You don't want it. So the things I was drinking made from powders in restaurants, the lemonade and the smoothies from the espresso bars, certain types of fruit, and a lot of whipped cream, and iced. A lot of times temperature does make a difference too on what you're ingesting. Usually I tend to want something very hot or very cold and not in between. And you should listen to yourself, because some people are more of the type that might like lukewarm temperatures or just warm or just cool. And that's an individual personal preference, might change from time to time. So I had honest, good, healthy cravings going here, things that I definitely needed in these smoothies and in the lemonade. Unfortunately, though, since I'm OD'd on soybeans, and there's a lot of soy powder in these, whatever genetic modification it has, I don't know. But it was modified enough to where the soybean taste didn't offend me too much, so I was able to enjoy the flavors that I was craving. First sip I'd feel and sense and smell the soy underneath, and of course that repels me. But it was mild enough and toned down enough that I was able to get around it in just the first few sips, and then get to the flavors I was craving and enjoy those. Sometimes I've wondered if it isn't just the flavor itself, maybe even more than the food content, that satisfies your body and changes your chemical balance to what you need for the optimum maintenance and health. What I'm looking at here is a fly that's on my screen door, and I'm craving here and itching to go over there and open the door and let it go out. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to do, take a break here. Let you see my empty kitchen in the background. And I'll go get rid of a fly by opening the screen door. Be right back. It's a huge one, a horsefly. Okay, I'm back. I got rid of my fly. I don't like to even kill flies, honestly. I will if I have to, but I'd rather just figure out a way to quietly go to the screen door and open it and let them go outside. So, was there a fly in the ointment? Usually I think there's always synchronicity and purpose in things, so we'll see if something comes up later about this fly that I had to go take care of. I wonder if that's like a goad. Okay, and here, oh boy, this is a laugh, another joke from UC. I was making notes here on my Verizon wireless bill, because that's what I'm going to do next, is pay that bill. So I handmade some notes to remind me of what I was after. I'm not sure if you can see this. There, the word good versus bad people. I don't know, but to me that looks like goat. Goat, goat versus bad people. Thinking of the goat and the devil being a cloven hooved and the goat. I think goats are good creatures, and I don't really see that devil image as evil. To me, like I've said, evil is people or entities or whatever they are that attempt to enslave and control other creatures or beings for their own use and take away the free will and take away their spirit, their integrity, their individuality, manipulate their DNA, all to their own ends. That's what I see as evil. Forcing this. So back to the powdered lemonade and powdered smoothies, and they are really good. In the past, a lot of the things that were presented with soy in them, I never craved, and I would just want to get away from. And here we get back to another thing. The bottom line is there weren't very many choices unless you really searched. And thankfully on Amazon now I can search organic or search no GMO, no soy to get away from it. So what I'm saying again is I think we need to have choices. We might come to a point that soy being genetically mutated foods, and they're really working hard to make them taste good and put interesting, fancy, spicy menus in restaurants that are the more spice, and the hotter the spice, usually the more soy that's in it because it can be hidden. And the point is, why does it need to be hidden? Well, maybe because, according to something I read, I think on Dr. Mercola's website, one of the Monsanto representatives was quoted as saying, if they're forced to label things clearly that are GMO or that have soy in them, that it's like putting a skull and crossbones on the product, that it won't sell. Well, you might think so. A lot of people want to get away from this stuff. Even though as it evolves, for all I know, it could, like I've mentioned in clothing before, I do believe that this is since I believe in a intelligent design that evolves, that isn't static, and I don't know that human beings obviously were not made as is today in the original evolution, but that story isn't, I'm not sorted it all out yet. Boy, now I'm going to let myself get lost here. So maybe what I'll do is just go back to where I sidetracked, which was again the powder. They're getting it good enough now with the modifications that it might be okay. And there might be some people that, if given the choice, gets back to that, an open, clearly labeled choice of what's in their food. And that there might be people who will honestly choose the more adventurous route, if you want to call it that, of genetically modified foods that base off of soybeans or whatever. They're making some real interesting menus with interesting flavors. So I don't care if people want to have that choice, but I want mine. I can tell the difference between anything that's genetically modified or with soy in it and with all the additives, as opposed to what I call real food, which is organic, and meaning just, for me, no GMOs. And it used to mean more like no soy. Now, a lot of organic foods are thinking that organic soy is healthy. If you read the article, The Dark Side of Cinderella by Doctors Mary Enig and Sally Fallon, I agree with a lot of it. Soybeans in their original form were not used by the Asians as a food, and that they were known to be toxic beans. They were meant, according to these articles, they were meant to be tilled into the soil, to be used that way for conditioning the soil, not as a food. And it wasn't, they learned that if you fermented the soybean, that some of the toxic anti-nutrient qualities would be decreased or diminished enough that they could use it in soy sauce, and I still do like soy sauce. It's always appealed to me. I've never had that repulsive feeling that I do with other types of soy. And I used to like tofu. All the types, the ways they learned in the early Asians when they were still wise in their own ways, with their own history. And of course, a lot of them still are, I hope. But they found ways to use soy as not necessarily as an everyday food, though. They were to be used sparingly still, because there were still some problems. And to put soybean products one way or another into every food, pretty much that you have easily available on the marketplace in restaurants and in grocery stores, to me that's just wrong. And I'm seeing more choices now, and I choose to have real food. And once in a while I might kind of, if I had the choice both ways, I would still maybe dip into some of the other side, so to speak. Some of the genetically modified, because there are still some scientists and some people in that industry that mean well and that aren't on the dark side of literally trying to use some of this stuff in what you could call anything but dark ways. I still feel that they're greatly the minority, and I'm overall not concerned, but I'm happy for websites like Dr. McCullough's and for doctors like Dr. Carolyn Dean, and especially Dr. Mark Circus, being out there with their magnesium, increasing awareness of that, and increasing awareness of how some of the darker people in different professions are trying to prevent the healthy things like magnesium being made generally aware. Boy, I've really rambled on this one, and I think I've probably gone on long enough. I did also want to ask, with these types of presentations that I'm doing, that any of the people that are watching them and want more and are enjoying them, wanting to keep following, or if you'd prefer the real short ones like 10 minutes or 15, or if the ones that go into 40, when I really dig into something and go into it deeply and give some meat for food for thought, which types you'd like better. Basically what I usually do is what I'm sparked to do with my point of power in the present, taking my cues when it's time to finish it. Trying to take cues every time I switch from one track to another. So I've introduced a few more of the things, chewed off a few more of the bites that I was hoping to weave into what I've already said to balance it all a little bit better. Maybe I'll end on something. I used to do macrame wall hangings, and always just without a recipe, so to speak, without a pre-made design to follow. And what I would do there too, me being a Libra sun sign, although if you look at the whole chart as a professional astrologer, the sun sign is one piece, and nobody reflects their sun sign perfectly. Some people don't reflect it at all because a lot of other parts of their chart actually take precedence. Oh, I'm good at sidetracks. Now I really lost it, how I was going to conclude this. The balance, yeah, and the macrame. All I would do is just keep changing the style and the knots, as it seemed like one thing was already, did enough of that design, enough of that knot, and changed to another style. I did this just all right brain instinct, intuition, trying to keep changing when something seemed to be getting stagnant in a design. And I came up with some pretty neat end results. It's kind of what I do too in writing in here. And going back to that visceral history thing that I'm working on now on my current project, it's working out in a real interesting way by me tying it back to one of the core times when I was doing my visceral history thing in writing, and it was when John Kennedy was assassinated. And when I first heard over the loudspeaker in a high school, I don't know if I remember junior high or high school classroom, it was a typing class. I heard them announce his assassination, and my first thought was horror like everybody else and compassion and hoping he would live. But it was also, I had a strong desire to capture the reaction, the emotional, visceral reaction of all the people around me and to the environment, how the reaction occurred to that shock. And I added some of what I wrote and how I might even write it differently today with the experience I've had in writing. And I'm not sure which way is better. And that's included, at least at the moment, the way close to what I wrote it then. I don't remember precisely. And I don't have a copy of that article that was published in our school newspaper. But it's all weaving there too and balancing. Me adding that personal bit of exactly where I came to the seed of this concept and code of visceral history. Adding that personal phase there. For some reason I was resisting that before, and after I finally broke through and put it in there today and let it flow in, it just seems so appropriate to have the code reflect what the code supports. So now this is definitely a time to go ahead and wrap and say thanks for listening. And hope that somebody's getting some benefit out of this. At least I'm still having some views. So see you next time, whenever next time comes.